Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, this is Thomas Hubert, digital editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with our news correspondent Pat O'Toole and market specialist Phelim O'Neill, and we're going to talk about this chemical angel dust, this drug that was found on a farm in the past few days, or reported in the past few days. Pat, what do we know about what happened?
Well, we know that this is the first case for some years, but there's been a significant find of clenbuterol, or angel dust as it's commonly known, on a County Monaghan farm. There's a lack of clarity around exactly how the department first became aware of illicit use of this drug with farm animals, but what we do know of is that there has been a positive case, that an investigation involving the Special Investigations Unit of the Department of Agriculture and the Gardaí uncovered significant volumes. We were told of 40 litre bottles. Now that doesn't mean that they were full, but there were 40 litre sized bottles found with traces of clenbuterol in them. So there was a significant usage of clenbuterol on this farm, and our understanding is that the department is now tracing back the footfall of the animals from this farm to ensure that there's no risk to the food chain. And I have to stress, there's no risk to human safety from this drug. It's about traceability and making sure that the animals which have been subjected to this drug are not then released into the food chain unnecessarily. But it is a legal issue and a food security issue, but not a food safety issue.
Phelim, maybe if we look at how this was picked up, what kind of checks are done in Ireland at the moment for this type of illegal drug, and how are they being traced if there are any residues there?
The Department of Agriculture undertake routine sporadic checks in the abattoirs of the country. They do it across all food species to check if there are any contaminants or antibiotics, anything in the animals or indeed the other species that shouldn't be there. Across all species, about 20,000 tests are undertaken annually. In the case of cattle, about 4,000 tests are typically undertaken each year across the abattoirs in the country. And in 2014, the year for which we have the most recent results, there were 14 examples or 14 cases where issues were found that shouldn't have been there. Now, it wasn't clenbuterol in those cases. I think the last case of clenbuterol might have been 2011. But it's issues where there are antibiotics haven't been fed in an animal and hasn't done the proper withdrawal period or something like that. So there's that monitoring system. In addition to that, then, the department would have investigative powers to do on-farm checks, which they use where there's grounds for any suspicion, and that could be from a veterinary test, herd test, or anything that would generate suspicion. There will be a follow-up investigation. I think what's very important to know is that this case has been highlighted and found because the department was proactive in its investigation. Now, if it was something that was endemic in our industry, as might have been the case a quarter of a century ago when the use of this product known as angel dust was widespread, then that would be an issue for the reputation of the Irish meat industry. But in an isolated one-off example where someone foolishly believes that they can gain an advantage over other people that are producing beef by getting greater yields and greater volumes of beef on their carcass, then there is just probably, like is the case with drink driving, despite the fact that there's very strong legislation in place that doesn't allow it, some people do take the chance, and very often they get caught and due process in the courts follows.
Pat, just to spend a minute on this product, what is really clenbuterol and why would you use it in your cattle?
It's a drug which is used both in people and in animals for respiratory or heart conditions. Clenbuterol is used as a beta blocker for people with irregular heartbeats. It also can be used where there's respiratory issues. Asthma sufferers sometimes have clenbuterol prescribed to them. Its use for animal is strictly prohibited. For equines it's prohibited because of it has the ability to enhance performance, it's believed, but also muscle development, lean muscle in particular, and that's why it's popular for feeding to animals. It encourages the kind of growth that you want. Lean muscle development is exactly what farmers are looking for when they're growing animals for meat. It was used far more than anyone would have liked to have seen back in the mid to late 90s. We experienced two things which happened in quick succession. One was the banning of the previously legal hormones, And plain cattle, as farmers would call them, especially animals coming from the dairy herd, are very hard to finish once those hormones were taken away. The other thing that happened was the BSE crisis. Beef prices effectively collapsed, especially prices for plain cattle in the mid-90s. And following that, farmers fell into the temptation of using clenbuterol. The Special Investigations Unit was specifically set up to stamp out its usage. It was linked to paramilitaries on both sides, but on particularly the Republican side of the divide, and they were linked to the distribution of it and the manufacturing of it, and it has been stamped out, and this is an exceptional case. It's the first, as Phelim says, in 5 years. It shows that the rigorous testing is uncovering these rogue farmers and these rogue cases, and it means that we can stand over our beef herd as being clean.
Phelim, any reactions from abroad or any expected fallout? We are known for high quality beef. What does this case say about our industry?
Well, taking a positive perspective on it, this says that our testing system works. We're vigilant. We find where there are non-conformances, and I suppose it also demonstrates the need for a zero tolerance of this. There's no one on earth that will be more outraged by incidents like this than legitimate Irish farmers, legitimate Irish beef producers. It's been a long, hard road to get Irish beef towards the top end of premium markets across Europe and indeed further afield. We think, for example, in the United States, where steak meat may be a smaller volume than we would like that's going there, but it does command premium top end prices. Currently, our beef would be amongst the most expensive in Europe outside of the UK, and maintaining that status as a premium product involves extreme vigilance. It involves zero tolerance for anyone that seeks to flout the production system, that seeks to cheat in any way whatsoever, irrespective of the fact that there's no issue with public health. The fact is that Irish beef has a reputation that's based on its integrity, and anything like this undermines that integrity, and therefore it has to be stamped out.
Okay, Phelim, Pat, thank you very much. We've all the details in this week's Irish Farmers Journal, and we'll keep our readers updated as more details emerge at farmersjournal.ie and on the news app. Thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The Irish Farmers Journal's news editor Patrick Donoghue is in New Zealand this week. You can follow his continuing coverage of the farming industry there, as well as field days, the Kiwi equivalent of the ploughing, at farmersjournal.ie and on the Irish Farmers Journal news app. One of the farmers he met there is the dairy chairman of Federated Farmers of New Zealand, Andrew Hoggard.
Andrew, first day of Field Day 2016, early in the morning yet, but what are you expecting farmers to say to you over the next 4 days?
By and large, it'll be government policies, so rules and regulations around the environment, immigration, labour. Those are the sort of discussions that most of our farmers have with us. I mean, people will talk about how tough and tight things are, but they're not really looking to me for solutions, because I think most New Zealand farmers know that having a protest isn't going to change anything for us here in New Zealand.
Is that a slight dig about how dairy farmers do it in Ireland and Europe?
Not so much Ireland, but I guess the French do love a good protest, and I often look at them and wonder, what do you think you're going to achieve by that? But obviously they achieved something, and I don't know why the French urban people put up with it. Personally, if it was here in New Zealand, there'd be mass bloody riot on the street, really, between farmers and urbanites over there.
And environmental constraints and just having to deal with more environmental issues becoming a big issue for your farmers and your members. How are dairy farmers in particular dealing with those more stringent concerns?
It's been a factor here in New Zealand for nearly as long as I've been involved in the dairy industry, so about 20 years. There's sort of been a campaign around what dairy intensification is doing to waterways. Initially it was concerns around cows walking in creeks, and so I think early in the 2000s we had what was called the Clean Streams Accord, where a voluntary thing for farmers fencing off waterways, ensuring cows don't go into waterways. That morphed in 2013 into the Sustainable Dairy Water Initiative, or Accord, which is going further and looking at nutrients and that. So on the voluntary side, as an industry, we've recognised this and we're putting actions in place or encouragement and trying to sort the issue out ourselves. But at the same time, you've also had regional councils and the national government bringing up rules and regulations. So in some cases it's nitrogen caps, and it's not caps in the sense of how much nitrogen fertiliser you can apply, but we have a program in New Zealand called Overseer, which is sort of a computer modelling, which takes all the inputs, your stocking rate and rainfall, soil types, and estimates, given all those numbers, what you're likely to leach out the soil profile. So it's focused on the output of the farm. Some farms you'll have nitrogen limits, say of 21 kg of N to the hectare, which is in my region where they were intending to get to. So on a farm like mine, with the systems and stuff I've got in place, I can actually achieve that. So I'm doing all right there. So like I was to increase my stocking rate, perhaps increase my N fertiliser over what I'm currently doing, then that could change that quite a lot to manage all those things to keep it in line. I'm not actually captured by those rules, but if they were, because my catchment is actually not one of the targeted priority catchments, it's only the targeted ones that are in these rules.
And finally, we're in a dry period now, but cows will be calving within 6 or 8 weeks. What is the mood of your members as we head into a new price season?
It's somewhere in between bubbly optimism and sad depression. Basically, it's sort of in the middle, sort of a determined feeling that we can get through it. I think the key thing is farmers that have got plans in place, they've thought through, they're talking to their bank managers, they're talking to their accountants, they've got things structured and they've got a plan. Usually the banks will back them, other people will back them, and that's the sort of stuff you need. I think for the majority of farmers, the vast majority, they know it's going to be another tough season, but we'll get through. We won't enjoy it, but we'll get through.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Patrick also spoke with Dr. Harry Clark, the director of the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research, about increasing agricultural production to feed the world while reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Harry, what you said there in Hamilton, New Zealand is very similar to what we hear in Dublin, Ireland. How do we feed the world, but not starve ourselves and not destroy the world? How is that possible, and how can they do it?
I think it is a challenge. We do have this issue that we need to feed the world. The population is growing very fast. We have to increase our agricultural production. How can you reduce emissions with that background? And at the end of the day, we can do so much with increased efficiency. And we are all doing that. New Zealand is doing that. Ireland is also doing it. I've seen the analysis for Ireland. We can reduce the emissions per unit of product. Unfortunately, if we want absolute reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, the efficiency route isn't enough on its own. And I think that's where we have to think about new technologies. Can we develop new technologies? And that calls for research. And I think luckily worldwide now that's recognised. And I know Ireland is investing quite heavily in research. New Zealand is investing quite heavily in research. And there's a global alliance now that is realising that in each individual country is going to struggle on its own. And let's tackle this as a world problem with the countries collaborating.
Is there a fear that powerhouses in agriculture like New Zealand and like Ireland, that if we are forced to cut back, if we're to be draconian and cut back in herd numbers, that countries that don't do it as well will just benefit?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a very genuine fear, that countries like Ireland, countries like New Zealand are very, very efficient producers if you're working on greenhouse gases per unit of feed. If we don't produce, perversely, someone else who is less efficient may well do, and so greenhouse gases worldwide go up. So us cutting back does not actually solve the problem. It gives to a perverse outcome if we are not careful.
Do you think the future is brighter, or do you have any concerns?
I think the future is a lot brighter. I think that in terms of some of the technical breakthroughs, we're a lot closer than we were. We're still a long way from market, but we do have time. At the end of the day, some of the greenhouse gases from agriculture, methane, nitrous oxide, particularly methane, are quite short-lived. And so there is a bit of time. The main gas to attack in the short term has to be carbon dioxide because of its long-term nature in the atmosphere. And so even if we can't touch methane now, so long as we're attacking carbon dioxide, we've got a bit of time to methane. But we need to use that time well by investing in research to find the technologies.
The Irish Farmers Journal weekly podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Teagasc named its Student of the Year this Wednesday, and my colleague Anthony Jordan met the winner, Damien McGrath, a young farmer and GreenCert student from County Galway.
Big congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Talk me through the process of all this. I mean, over what period of time did this project, or how long did it take?
It's based over the entire school, the academic year. There's a student from every agricultural college selected to go forward to an interview process. That was held last April. There was 8 contestants altogether, and we had the results of today, and I won the overall Student of the Year award.
And did much preparation go into the interview that you had?
A small bit of preparation at home, just going over questions I thought that might be relevant or that might come up. I suppose it was a tough interview. The interview panel was Tony Pettit, Sean Finian and Claire Walsh from FBD, and I suppose they have a great knowledge of agriculture, and they were well able to test me on my own knowledge. So,
in terms of the future for yourself, where do you see yourself going with this? Obviously this is a massive stepping stone to what you want to do in the future.
Yeah, I suppose this is my first year at home full-time farming. It's all a new experience for me. I suppose this has helped me make a lot of contact with a lot of people within Teagasc and the Department of Agriculture. I suppose it'll just help me get more involved with local discussion groups and farmers of dairy farmers with good knowledge in the area. It'll help me out in my own career.
In terms of word from Mount Bellew College, they were obviously a massive support in this process.
Yeah, I suppose Mount Bellew has been great. It's the third year in a row that Mount Bellew has won this award. I suppose in 2012 it was, or 2013 it was Kevin Moore, and in 2014 it was Ed Payne, and this year myself. So it's a great achievement for Mount Bellew. I suppose Tom Burke there and Vincent Flynn have been a great help throughout the year, and even since I've left the college, you can call in at any time to get any advice or from anyone in there. It's a great facility, so it is.
Damien, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
We are now just 1 week away from the Brexit referendum on whether the UK should leave the European Union. The debate is raging on, and our news correspondent Odile Evans met agricultural economist Tom Arnold and Northern Irish farmer John Sheridan.
Do you think that the British Exchequer would fund, in the event of a Brexit, would fund farming and subsidise it? Because, I mean, some of the arguments that farmers have given to me in England, wherever they say, you know, that MEPs, they don't have access to them as much as, you know, the ordinary citizen. So do you think they would fund it?
I think that there'd have to be some level of British support for farming. They couldn't just completely say, we're not going to give any subsidy to British farmers. Yeah. But I suppose my point is that it's very unlikely that it will be at the level that is currently available. Yeah. And Northern Ireland farmers are the most vulnerable of all, because they are more dependent on public subsidy than any other region
in the UK.
And it creates an
imbalance north and south of the border as well, to a certain extent.
Well, that's another dimension. Yeah. But if you just look at the support arrangements that the British government putting in place a new agricultural support system, they'll be reaching some kind of a compromise arrangement to give farmers a certain amount, but farmers in different parts, different regions will be looking to maximise what they can get out of that. But most other regions are not as dependent on public support as are Northern Ireland farmers.
And would there be a difference between the sectors, like dairy?
Yeah, well, I think beef would be most vulnerable of all, because traditionally, I suppose, dairy farmers have tended to do better out of the public purse than others. Yeah. But I would say the beef sector will be immensely vulnerable.
And just on that, and it's been a comment I've heard from Meat Industry Ireland, that they fear that the UK could become a backdoor for the Mercosur group of countries.
There is a risk of that, yeah. That's where, if Britain is to make, if you like, fundamental choices in a post-Brexit situation, and they are going in the direction of, you know, a new version of the cheap food policy, then of course Britain would have every incentive to have more liberal trading arrangements, particularly with South America.
You're voting to stay within Europe. What is your main reasons?
Why should I isolate myself from a market of 600 million odd customers? I remember when there was no Europe and we were living in a less favoured area beside the border on the very western periphery of Europe, on the very western periphery of Westminster then, which was the people who dictated farming policy. And when Europe came, it gave us the chance to sell our stock just as well as anybody outside of London. We got the same price, more or less. It gave us infrastructure in the country we live in the rural area we live in. And one of the people who might get most frustrated with the decision-making process in it, but at least it gave us peace since the World War. We've had the longest stage of peace. It's all very well now when we have our setup on farms, we have our houses in double glazing, we have safety of employment, we have safety of food to an extent, we have certain tariffs to keep the tsunami of world product out to an extent. So there's some safety in it, and at the same time we have a single market. Our children can go all over the place and they have a European medical card if anything happens to them. We can live and work anywhere in Europe, and I cannot think of anywhere else in the world to live that's outside of Europe that's better.
But you're here right on top of the border. How do you think that if you do leave Europe, how do you think that would pan out?
It isolates me. It leaves me that all of a sudden a mile and a half down the road's a foreign country. Where I farm, 2 yards is a foreign country. I think particularly agriculture on the island of Ireland should be one agriculture. There should be no difference between north and south at all. There should be absolutely free movement of trade in every shape and form. For a long, long time the north never had the export facilities, etc., that the south did. And I think that I'm going to still have to conform with the same rules, regulations, directives. And on top of that, if an agreement is got on trade and tariffs, on whatever product it is, let it be agriculture or anything else, I'm going to have more red tape on top of that to get it exported into Europe. On top of all the red tape we have now, I'm going to have an extra layer if agreement is reached. To try and sell my stock.
Speaking to guys in England, one of the things that they worry about, that if they left the EU, that English farmers have very little access to their politicians in comparison to like what we have definitely in the south of Ireland, and they just feel like that because they're such a low proportion of the voting population, that the British government will forget about farmers. And is that a worry here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If fellas in Cumbria are worried about it, fellas in the north of Ireland are definitely worried about it because it's another shock to cross.
So my last question would be, how do you think the vote will go?
I think it's going to be close. I hope that common sense will persevere. I personally think that it has a stabilising effect on world peace. It had an effect through the Good Friday Agreement on peace between the north and south of Ireland. And unfortunately, the human race are too fond of, when everything's fine, they have to change it and pucker about with it and give out until they start to fall out of themselves and squabble again. And that is, unfortunately, is human nature. And that's the danger of it. But I think that worldwide, I think Europe need to stand together. Every other place in the world have trading blocks now, and we need our trading block. And there is no way that any country in Europe can survive and go it alone without Europe in some shape or form. So I think they have no choice, only stick together.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
On his recent trip to the US, the Irish Farmers Journal's agribusiness editor Owen Larry bumped into a group of South American beef farmers. Andre Perrone from Brazil was one of them.
Our family started in 1949. My dad is an Italian family and we started oranges. And then we started middle 80s. We started cropping sugarcane, producing ethanol. And 90s we start raising cattle. Our main business now is feed yard. We own a feed yard with a 16,000 one capacity.
16,000 animals.
16,000 animals, yes. We production of 33,000 animals per year. That's what we finish. Most of our diet is being a byproduct that is a very competitive and is a very integrated with agriculture. Why we do not compete with a human consumer. We're using a byproduct of corn, byproduct of peanuts, byproduct of soya, a little bit of hay, byproduct of cotton. That is our mostly diet.
And are the animals inside all the time, or are they grazing during their lifetime? So when do you buy the animals?
Yeah, that's a very good point of a view. Our feed yard, even in Brazil, we fed an animal about 1/3 the time of their life. So the cattle can grow up and be raised on the pastures fields until about 18 months old, between 18 to 24 months old. Okay, then they come to our feed yard. Our feed yard we respect in about 16 square meters per head. They stays on the pen, and where they receiving 4 rations of diet per day, water, irrigation, so to control and about the temperature, the dusty, for the welfare control, and they stays on feed in about 100 days.
So when they are ready for slaughter,
Yes,
what
sir.
age are they?
Average is between 24 to 30 months old.
And what weight on average?
580 kilograms per carcass.
So you're finishing a lot of animals every year. What is the biggest challenges at the moment in Brazil?
Right now is a diet production. Our diet is based on corn. It's not specified on corn, but it's a byproduct of corn. So our production corn, our stocks is pretty low, and the corn prices went really high. So it's almost 100% more than the last year. So that's our biggest challenge, is how to produce, how to combine a byproduct with the best efficiency.
We hear a lot in Europe about these trade agreements with South American countries in the Mercosur group. Is it something that the industry is driving? So the industry being the food processors, the meat factories, is everybody driving for this?
Yeah, that's why we've been export for quite a few years. And in the past time, we've been exporting just price. And now we are showing that we can export good price and a good quality on it.
What is the biggest risk to your business at the moment, in particular to the Brazilian economy?
Well, Brazilian economy, that is our biggest problem now. And looks like it's not an economic problem, but it's a political problem.
How is the beef price in Brazil currently?
Per kilo of carcass weight is about 305 to 310 American dollars to a kilo of carcass weight.
So for our listeners, that equates to about €2.70 per kilo in Irish terms. That's quite a low price compared to what we receive. So that must mean you're able to produce the cattle much cheaper. Are you making money?
We are not making money right now. We are in a hard situation, but what we see is the cattle business in Brazil is really good. It is amazing. You can produce cattle in a larger scale without open new lands. You can produce. But this business to be profitable, we have to show this market, how we can produce in quality on larger scale and at good prices.
Are the beef companies, the processors, making money in Brazil at the moment? We see a lot of beef processors are coming into Ireland. Last week we saw JBS going to set up an office in Dublin, and they also own My Park in Ireland. Are they making money, and Marfrig making money?
The change rate in about the reais to dollar being hard. So they are in a hard situation. We have to understand. We have to improve our business.
Thanks very much for talking to me, Andre.
The Irish Farmers Journal weekly podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Last weekend, anyone with an interest in farming and history was in Athenry for Teagasc's Farming and Country Life 1916 event. For those of you who didn't make it, let's travel in time with Anthony Jordan.
Joseph, tell us about the stand that you're at today.
We're here to Himmick in Athenry. We're here, we've cocked the hay loaded on a shifter, and we'll be unloading them, and hopefully if it dries up a little bit later on, we'll be able to do a little bit of turning.
And you're into ploughing yourself?
Yeah, we do a bit of competition ploughing.
And this is a draft horse you have here in front of you?
It's a Clydesdale horse, Clydesdale cross horse.
And your father Eamon obviously was on the Farmers Journal or the Country Living last week in the supplement. You plough multiple times every year?
Yeah, we've probably got maybe 15 matches done this year.
And how long have you been ploughing for?
Well, we've been ploughing a long time with tractors and that, but the last 4 or 5 years maybe with horses.
And in terms of the event itself, it's a fantastic testimony to the old ways of Irish life, isn't it?
It is brilliant. It's brilliant. It's a great show here to see everything, all the old ways.
There's no need for Bruce Springsteen down here in Athenry, I'm over here at the Haycocking stand where a few boys have actually started belting out a tune.
Refused to shine on the bloody flannel drawers that Maggie wore. They were tattered, they were torn, round her hillside they were worn. That bloody flannel drawers that Maggie wore. Now the sad bird. Well, she buried them in the ground, and the weeds for miles around refused to grow near Maggie's flannel drawers. They were tattered, they were torn, round the waistline they were worn. The bloody flannel drawers that Maggie wore.
I'm here with Frank and Mary Dillon from Westmeath. Lads, I'm not saying you were born before 1916, but this definitely is a blast from the past, isn't it?
Sure it is, definitely. It brings back happy memories, well, hard-working memories and sunny days and all that kind of thing. But it's lovely to revive those memories. Thank God we don't have to work that hard anymore. But it's still nice for especially younger people, younger than myself, to see how we did live in the good old days, you know.
I'm here with Michael Summers, the Artistic Director of the Teagasc 1916 Farming Life and Country Living. Tell me about what just happened out there.
What we did there with Holy Rosary School there from Mount Bellew with their transition year class was a hiring fair. Hiring fairs were quite common in Ireland up to about 100 years ago. They continued on in Northern Ireland up until the 1950s. The biggest hiring fair in the country was in Strabane in Tyrone, and a lot of people from Donegal and around that part of Ulster would have sent their children effectively off to get work in the big houses and big farms. Usually happened twice a year in May and November, the different fairs. So it was predominantly a labour fair, but people that would have been out of work or the poor people would have been hired in hiring fairs.
And in terms of the demonstration that just went on, how many children would have took part in it?
There's 10 transition year students out of Holy Rosary. We've been working on it there for the last couple of weeks. It's a very difficult form of theatre, I think, for youngsters, because a lot of people, and have gained maybe from this project, are afraid of breaking the fourth wall. The fourth wall is a theatre term. Like, I wouldn't be that big of a fan of it. I like that cold immersive stuff where you bring the people in, and they've done really good work, and I've been quite happy with them.
And how many sessions of practice have you had before you actually went and done the real thing?
Look, we've had 4 sessions with them, but like, I've been involved in a couple of the different plays here, so like I've been full time on this now since April, so I'm coming to an end of the thing. So yes, it's been quite a big enjoyable ride.
And in terms of the actual overall wages that children who would have actually been sold in this or rented in this way 100 years ago, how much would they've got paid, or what would the conditions like?
Look, it's like anything else. Maybe some places were good and some places was bad. A lot of them might have only got their fare to America, would have it, but it was predominantly children that was in it. And of course you have to remember that the barter system was quite prevalent in Ireland 100 years ago, and a lot of them would have only got their board and lodgings and digs out of it.
I'm here with Shawnee Barron, who hand makes traditional walking sticks. Shawnee, the last time I seen this many sticks on a table, I was running away from my father. Tell me about this spread of sticks that you have here.
Well, they're all handmade and things like that, you know what I mean? And I sell them in old fairs and things like that. I used to before Kilmallock and places, old fairs like that.
And come here to me, how long would it take to make a stick like this?
Oh, you have to cut it first, find it first, and then dry it out for a year, and,
really?
And then you can walk it in after that.
So it's a year-long process to get from the start to the end?
Yeah, from the start to the end, yeah.
And this would have been the traditional sticks of people back in 1916?
Yeah, these are the 1916, yeah, right, the guns as well, like. Yeah. So they used to have, they made them guns before they got the real ones, like, you know, the way the guys did. So
and these would have been great aids for, say, shepherds or people who were going out with the sheep?
These are for sheep. They used to be, instead of running after the stick, they'd wait for the sheep to come over, and they'd pick out just a little sheep by the hind leg and pick it up like that, you know.
So the way the walking stick is designed, it's almost designed to be catching the sheep as well as assisting walking?
Yeah, assisting walking. Perfect. As well as that, you know.
Yeah.
And you can put your finger in there and walk away, you know, and keep up balance. Coming down the hills and going up the hill, like, you know.
They won't be breaking too easy.
They won't break, they're black tar, they won't break at all.
Shawnee, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Finally, Irish Country Living journalist Mary Phelan speaks to features editor Maria Monaghan about the charity Embrace Farm. This group helps people who have been affected by fatalities or accidents on the farm, and will hold a memorial service for the victims of farm accidents next week.
Embrace Farm is an organisation that was set up about 3 years ago by Brian and Norma Rowan. So they set it up after Brian's father Liam was tragically killed in a farm accident. And they found that after the accident there really was nowhere they could turn to, no organisation. There was other kind of helplines and other organisations, but they're very much targeted towards other types of tragedies, whereas a farm death or a farm accident, it's a very specific type of event, it's a very specific type of community, and they really felt that an organisation that was kind of tailor-made to helping farm families would be beneficial, given that there are unfortunately so many farm accidents every year.
Of course. And they're holding a very special event next Sunday, Sunday week, the 26th of June in Abbey Leaks. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So they're holding a remembrance service in the Church of the Most Holy Rosary in Abbey Leaks, County Laois, on the 26th of June at 2 p.m, as you said. This is a very special event. It's the third year in a row that they're holding it, and it's where people who have passed away as a result of a farm accident are remembered. So they would really encourage anyone who has been affected by a farm accident to go along on the day, and maybe if people feel that they're not quite able to go along on the day for whatever reason, you can also ring Norma and Brian and get the name of your loved one read out on the day. So that phone number is 085 770 9966, and it's quite a social occasion. So you don't just go to you can go and you can leave again, you don't have to stick around afterwards, but there will be a marquee set up behind the church and there will be tea and sandwiches there. So really it's an opportunity, if you have been affected by a farm accident, it's an opportunity for you to meet minded people as a result of it having happened to their family as well. So you might find a friendly listening ear there on the day.
Very good. And there's something a bit different as well happening this year, I think.
Yeah, so this year, Brian and Norma Rowan, they are a force to be reckoned with. They are just all the time trying to do more and more to help families that have been affected by farm accidents. So this year they are running a family weekend. It's happening the Saturday, Sunday, the same Sunday of the Remembrance Service, and it's really kind of targeted at children who are in a family that has been affected by a farm accident. And it's an opportunity, number one, for them to maybe try and deal with what they're going through. There will be, on the Sunday morning and the Saturday evening, there will be sessions with counsellors and bereavement counsellors and that kind of thing. But really it's also a bit of escapism, so it's a fun day out. So on the Saturday afternoon itself, the families are being brought to Castlecomer Discovery Park, where they can have a bit of fun. Then they come back to the Maldron Hotel in Portlaoise, that's where they're staying, and there will be kind of counselling sessions and talks and discussions happening the Saturday and Sunday, and then they'll be going to the Remembrance Service on the Sunday. So that's all being paid for by Embrace. They've done a lot of fundraising, and it's kind of a new initiative again to help farming families affected by farm accidents.
And apart from the special events, they've achieved quite an extraordinary amount of things in the past year as well. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of that, I suppose?
Yeah, so they were invited to participate in the very first hearing on farm safety. So that really meant a lot to them, that what they were doing was being taken so seriously, I guess, at government level. So they were one of, I think, 14 organisations that made a presentation on the day describing what they think the main issues are when it comes to farm safety and farm accidents. But then they have also set up a board to manage Embrace Farm. So Brian Rowan himself is the chair and director of this board, and he is joined by a number of people who have lost loved ones in farm accidents, but also by people like the chief inspector with the HSA, Pat Griffin, Teagasc manager Larry O'Loughlin. He's a local Laois man. He actually lost his father to a farm accident back in the 60s. CEO of the Farm Relief Services, Peter Byrne, and then Jared Keenan from Richard Keenan and Co in Carlow, as well as the communications director with ABP, Seamus Banham.
Degree of expertise there as well.
Yeah, a lot of industry input there.
And there was some as well. They made an agreement with Simon Coveney to do something very important as well, I think.
Yeah, so they got Simon Coveney to agree to place a liaison officer in the Department of Agriculture to deal directly with families affected by farm accidents. So really, I visited Norma and Brian down on the farm. Norma has 3 children. She's kept very busy with them, and yet she is nearly running this from her kitchen table. The board meetings are held around this big table where she has 12 people that come and visit, X amount of times during the year. So really, they're doing it from their kitchen, and they're doing doing a fantastic job. It's really very impressive.
And but it's done a lot of good for them as well, I think.
Yeah, so I visited the couple back 2-3 years ago when they were first setting up the organisation, and what they were saying at the time was Brian himself was finding it quite hard to move on from the death of his father, which is obviously quite normal, but they were really, Norma and Brian, they didn't really know what to do, how to proceed from here, how to make things better, I guess. And now, having met them again now 3 years down the line, really, Norma says what being involved in Brace has done for her husband. I mean, she said they were only married 10 months with a 6-day-old baby when Liam, the dad, was killed on the farm. So it was a very tough start for their marriage, and it's been difficult, but she said to me that she feels she has her husband back now.
Oh, that's great. And there's big plans for the future as well, I think.
Yeah, as I said, there's absolutely no stopping Brian and Norma. They will just keep going. So they're very keen to partner with a professional agricultural organisation to put in place a resource that families can draw upon when there is a farm accident, that somebody can actually come in and manage and run the farm, because quite often a wife or a partner that's left there has no idea how to run the farm, doesn't know what to do, and it's up to neighbours to kind of help out. And they also want to put in place a resource that can provide financial and legal advice to families, because that's again something that's not talked about but has huge implications. Bank accounts are frozen, people can't access funds to run the farm, so
that's not what you want to be thinking about at that time either.
Exactly. Yeah. So big plans for the future.
And so finally, I suppose maybe we might just give out the phone line again for people who want to, get in touch with Embrace to access whatever support.
Yeah, so it's 085 7709 966, and Brian and Norma are at the other end of that line. If you want to talk about a farm accident that has happened in your household, or if you just want to give them the name of a relative to be read out at the remembrance service, they will be at the other end of the phone.
Okay, and people can read a lot more as well in this week's Country Living. Thank you very much, Mary.
No worries, Maria.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.